55, but we need to break out of it because we want to talk about this government review into pharmaceuticals, essentially, to the costs associated with prescriptions when you can go to a GP, for example, and get sun cream and gluten-free foods and cold and cough medicines and headache tablets, the sort of stuff you could buy yourself, essentially, over the counter or at a local supermarket. Should we all be paying for this? The bill is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Is that a good use of public money, or is it time for the rest of us to reach into our own pockets next time we need some sun cream? Patrick Mulholland is a member of NIPS's executive. He's in the studio with me, along with the accountant Felicity Huston, who's on the line. Felicity, welcome. Patrick, welcome. What are your thoughts on this, Felicity?
Well, my first reaction was, who knew? I mean, I had no idea that I could get sunscreen from the doctor. In fact, until the invention of proper modern sun creams, I had suffered from massive photosensitivity. And the way I dealt with that was I just didn't go out in the sun, and I would cover up. Even my hands would break out because of the sun. And I never would have considered asking a doctor for sunscreen. It was just something you learned to live with.
It's a preventative, of course. It helps us to avoid getting skin cancer.
Yes, but you make a choice. You don't go out. I mean, people shouldn't be sunbathing without. If they decide to burn themselves in the sun, that's very foolish of them. They should know better nowadays. There are lots of things that we use. We use creams to try and prevent our skin getting dry. A lot of women use anti-wrinkle creams. It's a preventative. But does that mean we go to the doctor and say, please, could I have one of these anti-aging creams? I was genuinely amazed that you could get some of these things on prescription.
What do you think, Patrick?
Well, I mean, Felicity makes an interesting point there. She has an option about how she can deal with this, and she wasn't aware that such prescriptions were available on the health service. But we need to be very clear about this. This is based on medical need, not on a lifestyle choice. And if I can give an example, if somebody has to work outside, say somebody who works in grounds or works out in the roads, etc., they don't have a choice about this. And if they have very sensitive skin, there's a massive issue here for them. So they do need to be able to access...
Well, why doesn't their employer then pay for that?
Well, because we have a health service here that's based on medical need. That's the whole concept of the National Health Service.
That's prevention. If an employer is putting their employee in that situation, why don't they, just as they're required to give them overalls and stuff like that?
What we have to be very careful about here is that we do not take the principle and the concept of the National Health Service and to begin to break it down, because frankly, there's a wide lot of what is provided by the health service you could break down and say, well, why is the employer not doing this, that and the other? Why isn't somebody else not doing this? Why is the person themselves not doing it? The bottom line is...
Do you think the NHS should be required to provide visors for their faces if they're out working?
No, absolutely not. But
the employer would do that.
No, but what we're talking about here is a medical need. That's what we're referring to here. And we need to be very careful about this. The health service is not running off prescriptions for the sake of it, just for nothing. It's like people talking about gluten-free food. That's a medical need. It's not a lifestyle choice we're talking about here. This isn't a decision about, do I buy a bottle of red wine or a bottle of white wine? This is about, how will this medically impact me if I do not have it? And can I just make a point here? The cost of pharmaceuticals is astronomical in the health service. It's completely out of control. But it's not because of this. It's because the pharmaceutical companies are out of control. And what we really need to be talking about is price controls. We need to be taken up where the Competition Commission has said that they have a significant concern about the role of pharmaceutical companies. And we need to be talking about nationalisation and bringing this aspect of the health service under public control.
So you've seen the story today. I imagine everyone's talking about this story today. NHS England have been doing a review into this. They've identified, they say, £400 million of spending that they think has little or no clinical value. Just some of the stuff we're talking about. It's a long list, actually, of other things that they might approach. Presumably, Felicity, you would accept that if someone has a particular problem, if, for example, they've been through skin cancer, that a prescription would be appropriate in that case.
Well, I don't think anybody was ever suggesting people shouldn't get things that have a genuine medical need. Obviously, I mean, we're talking about the gluten-free. Obviously, celiacs have a genuine medical problem. And I have to say, some gluten-free bread is the least of their worries, of anybody who knows any celiacs. Yeah. Life is quite challenging enough. They're not really worried about getting a prescription for gluten-free bread. There is a real problem with this gluten-free obsession. I have to say, my own GP believes that wheat is basically the work of the devil, and that if we all gave up wheat, we would all be healthy. I think if I went in with a sprained ankle, he would prescribe abandoning wheat.
Well, some people who think accountants are the work of the devil.
Well, that's just insulting insulting, actually, Patrick. Thank you. I wasn't being rude to you.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know why you need to be rude to me.
You're being
Explaining
quite
about
rude
it.
to people who are finding themselves in the wrong end of medical need, receiving prescriptions, and are now the latest group in society to be demonised.
No,
as
I was
part
actually
of the
talking
process
about
of cuts.
celiacs who have a genuine medical
exactly.
need, and I know people who are celiacs, and I understand a bit about it.
Can I
was
just
then
break in?
talking
Sorry,
about
can I break in on this
lifestyles.
point because we do have Bobby Bradley with us. He's on the line, chairman of the local celiac group in the Northwest. Bobby, how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
What's your situation in terms of your condition and prescriptions?
Well, I've been celiac all my life, and I've always got my flour and bread and staple requirements on prescription. And gluten-free bread, as you know, it's 6 times dearer than normal bread, so gram for gram. And it's a necessity part of my diet. It's just what I would call my medicine.
Is bread a necessity for you?
Yes, it is.
And could you afford to purchase it yourself, or would that be a bit of a struggle?
Well, it would be a struggle. I'm a pensioner now, and it would be a struggle at the cost, to say, because it's 6 times dearer than a normal loaf.
So you're getting about, 4 loaves a week on prescription?
4 loaves a week.
Okay.
And it goes on points per month, and I could either get bread or flour.
Or make your own, that kind of thing, yeah. What do you make of that, Felicity?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I'd said, that people with medical conditions require things. Once again, the 1 or 2 celiacs I have known, I wasn't aware that they were getting all this stuff. They just tend to make choices about what they buy and how they live and adopt certain types of diet. I mean, I think to look at the price of these drugs, I mean, Pat and I would have some point of agreement that the price the NHS pay for these things is ridiculous, and they should be renegotiating. They are the biggest purchasers of pharmaceuticals in the world, and they shouldn't be beholden to the people who are selling
Well, you might agree on that, actually, as you say,
that's
because
what I said,
he's already made that
I
point.
suspect we probably don't even agree on that, because one of the big problems here is...
I thought you said as much yourself a minute ago.
But one of the problems is the pharmaceutical companies are gouging the health service. It's not that the health service are necessarily making mistakes. If I can give a couple of examples, I took a wee quick skim through Google to see what came up on this.
Or was it a dangerous thing to do?
Oh, extremely dangerous, particularly on health issues.
Yeah.
You never know what disease you end
Dr.
up with.
Google.
But it was interesting to see that the last reports that were in the media, in 2016, Pfizer were fined 84.2 million for overcharging by the Competition and Markets Authority, and they were doing that in conjunction with a company called Flynn Pharma for 5.2
Drop in the bucket,
million.
mind you, given their
Oh, it's a drop in the bucket, but this is only one of the drops in the bucket. And my point here is there's a real problem, and it isn't having yet another go at people who are on the receiving end of getting a script for sunscreen or whatever. If we want to talk seriously about this, let's talk about the hundreds and millions that's gouged out of the health service by these companies, and it really is time for that conversation to become serious and we start looking at nationalisation.
Other bills the NHS in England have pointed to is nearly £10 million in prescriptions for travel vaccines for people who presumably have the money to afford to go on holiday. But of course, there are some people who go travelling because of their work needs. They may not actually have a great deal of money for their own private travel around holidays. But some have raised that point. If you can afford a holiday, surely you can afford the travel vaccine. It could cost you 50 or 60 quid a jab for rabies or something like that.
On medical need. And once you start saying some medical need is more important than others, be very careful about where you end up, because some people...
Do you keep paying all these bills?
I think medical need is I have no difficulty with our health service running the basis of medical need. What I have a huge problem with, and the real issue
if somebody
here,
can afford a holiday, should the doctor suggest, why don't you pay for your own vaccinations?
The real issue here, William, is we have a health service that in part is run on profit, and if we want to deal with the cost...
Well, can you deal with that question? If somebody can afford to go on holiday, should the doctor at least say to the person, can you afford to pay for your own vaccine?
I think if somebody goes into a surgery to a doctor, the doctor is the right person to make a call on their medical needs. It's probably they have probably more medical basis to do so than me or Felicity.
We're talking about inoculations here. Let's go to Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, David. There is a serious...
It's William, but good to have you on the show.
Thank you. There is a serious sunshine debate. Many years ago, I was diagnosed with a malignant melanoma, which I didn't even understand at the time.
Yeah.
Now, since then, I have been told by the health service and my doctor and hospital that I have to wear sunscreen 365 days a year, even during the winter, because it's not so much the sun as the reds or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have been told by the hospital and the doctors I have to wear that every day of the year or I could still be in danger. So I do get that on the prescription, and I am a pensioner. And it's a necessary item for me, not a beautician or a vanity thing.
Yep. Absolutely, and nobody would suggest otherwise, Brian. You're a clear case where everybody in this conversation is in agreement. That's a case, it's a perfectly appropriate use of healthcare funding, Brian. But what about a situation, Brian, where somebody goes to a GP, says they're going on holiday, they need travel vaccinations, that gets paid for on prescription, and they ask the GP, is it possible to give them preventative sun cream that they can take with them? They get that in prescription free, and then they go off to Tenerife. What do you make of that situation?
Well, unless the GP says that it's medically needed for that person, absolutely they should pay for it themselves over the counter.
Yeah, I'm not sure, William, that these cases actually exist outside of the front page of the Sun or the Express or whatever. You get
this isn't coming from. Hang on a minute. This isn't coming from the Sun or the Express.
Every so often you get
this is coming from NHS England.
Every so often this is tossed up and this is brought out here that there's a big problem with this and there's all sorts of frauds, etc., going on.
This is coming from NHS England.
The next thing you have is the thin end of the wedge of cuts taking place in the health service. We should have prescriptions available based on medical need, not based on the cost of them or based on the profits of pharmaceutical
therein lies the rub, Felicity, because one person's idea of medical need is another person's idea of a lifestyle choice.
Well, I mean,
cancer.
that's what we have.
We're not talking about cancer in this wider case.
And I don't understand why the NHS should pay for your travel vaccines. I mean, my sons were away in Kenya a couple of years ago on a aid program, and we paid for their vaccines. Of course we did. I mean, because the places they were going, it was really dangerous. But I wouldn't have dreamt of asking the state to pay for that.
But they didn't have a medical need, did they?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Lots of these people are getting these things for nothing.
Who?
Sunscreen
the NHS
for prevention.
In England has said it's happening.
You don't think it's happening?
I think this is overblown statistics. We've seen this before with child support. We've seen it with people's disability benefits. And you have a sudden run in the media and public bodies saying there's a massive problem, and the next thing you see, cuts following behind it.
Felicity, thank you very much. Felicity Huston, thank you to Patrick Mulholland. We needed another hour on that one, didn't we? But that's it. The debate will continue, I'm sure, on Twitter at BBC Talkback. Over to Hugo.